meeting. This is a special meeting of Council to consider the February Budget Review, BR2, and the adoption thereof as part of the 21-22 annual budget. This meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. I would like to thank all those who are in the room, and I particularly not only my colleagues who are here but our support staff who are so valuable to us in terms of making this very large organisation move along beautifully and provide the services that we need to provide for our community. Can I also recognise those who are watching via Council's social media channels. In opening the meeting, can I acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands on which we meet today, the Western Waka Waka, the Gibel, the Djarowa and the Bigginbal peoples. And can I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, the rich traditions and the bold ambitions of Australia's first people. Move then to item 2, attendance including apologies. We have an apology today from Councillor Melissa Taylor. Would someone like to move the acceptance of that? Councillor Carroll has. Councillor Bill Carl has seconded that. Those in favour? That's carried. We're also noting leave of absence where there's no resolution required of Councillor James O'Shea. Any other matters that you wish to take up at this point in time?
Yes, Chair. Chair, could I please request leave, please, for the special meeting of Council on the 4th of May. If it occurs, that's a development application matter.
Okay. Councillor Von Hoff is requesting special leave for the meeting on the 4th of May. Would someone like to move the acceptance of that? Councillor Carroll has. Councillor McDonald has seconded that. Those in favour? It's carried. No declarable conflicts of interest, I would imagine. Okay, so we move to item 3, which is the February Budget Review, BR2, and I'll hand over to the Acting General Manager, Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. So the purpose of this report is to present for your consideration a revised annual budget. The detail of this review was discussed at a council information session last week on the 16th of March. So the proposed budget as presented decreases the operating surplus by 207,000 to 144,000. Capital income is decreased by 950,000 and capital expenditure is decreased by 5.5 million to 182 million, with the majority of these projects deferred until next financial year. On attachment 1, at page 8 of 37, that provides a summary of the key implications of this revised budget. Of note is the financial assistance grant, and this is the first opportunity we've had to reflect the reduction in this financial assistance grant, with the reduction of 743,000 this current financial year. This reduction will increase over the next 3 years to approximately $8 million in year 3. Trainees and apprentices. Additional trainees and apprentices have been employed by Council across the organisation, resulting in an additional $397,000 in government funding. Work cover. The reduction in Council's work cover premium of $475,000, and this reflects our safety first culture. Wivenhoe. The recent rain event and our dams currently at 100% means we won't be pumping from Wivenhoe for the remainder of this financial year, which will result in a saving of 1.4 million. This impact of not needing to pump from Wivenhoe will be reflected in next year's budget and in the following year's budget. It should be noted, though, that the fixed charge will still need to be budgeted for and paid. Each budget review, Council requires a full review of the Council's long-term financial sustainability plan. So those items that I've just discussed have all been modelled into the 10-year plan. There will be some more extensive modelling taking place over the next couple of months when we bring you the budget for next year, including the impacts of inflation, fuel costs, and those items that I've just discussed. But overall, if we look at page 15 of 37, we can see the impact of this budget review on our sustainability matrix, and overall reflecting positive outcome against the operating surplus, the asset sustainability and the net financial liabilities ratio. However, Council's asset sustainability and operating surplus, we can see, start to diminish over the 10-year plan. And there's a number of factors, including the financial assistance grant reduction and the impact of those additional capital works program, particularly the quarantine projects, which necessitate an increase in depreciation and borrowing costs for the organisation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Anne-Marie, I wonder if you might explain to the general public, I guess, how the financial assistance grants modelling why it's been changed and, well, obviously you can see the effect on our budget up there, but sort of how the modelling, why it's changed and their methodology.
So what happened, so the federal government provide the financial assistance grant to the state government for distribution. There's a grants commission who have a look at what the distribution is. So a decision was made to reduce Toowoomba Regional Council's contribution by 23% each year for the next 3 years, and those funds will be distributed to other councils.
So do we know the reasons why?
Because the Grants Commission believe we are a sustainable local government and worked with Queensland Treasury Corporation, had a look at our financial reporting, and the decision is that we're financially sustainable, and some councils do not have a rate base that contributes approximately 80% of our operational income.
Councillor Tim and then Councillor Carroll.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions, and I agree that a lot of people have done a lot of hard work to get us to that point, and then they, start taking it off you. I'm wondering about the disaster recovery funding arrangement. Yeah, we received, because of 2 events, $6 million from that, and by these calculations, 3.8 of it has been spent. As well as 1.4 million saved because we're not pumping from Wivenhoe. So just wondering what happens with that, especially the money from the disaster recovery funding arrangement.
So these adjustments at this budget review are to reflect what has been received this current financial year. So there could be expenditure in previous financial year, particularly relating to the February 2020 event. So expenditure could have already happened. With those, I'm happy to send you the overall income and expenditure for those events.
Oh, that would be really good. Thanks for clarifying that. I also had another question on the previous page where we're talking about overall our operating surplus. And I note that to maintain our QAO rating, we must have a small operating surplus, which went from 783,000 in the original budget, which I would consider small for a council our size, to 144 proposed. So if it was small, it's very small now. Are we still within our legal definition of small, or is it too small?
So our legal the sustainability target is 0 to 10%. So we would ideally like to be sitting around that 3-4%.
Okay. So we're not causing any issues for ourselves with that operating surplus?
But there is certainly a risk at the moment to the organisation with operating income reductions and additional expenditure.
Okay, sure. So will we look to make sure that's up in the next budget?
Certainly will, yes.
Thanks.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's very disappointing to consider the Grants Commission's decision and how they came to that, and we're one of the only few councils that have received a decrease, along with Western Downs, some of the bigger councils, and there are councils who are as big as us that have not had that decrease. But I just wanted to bring attention of councillors and the public perhaps to the fact that, that the decision of the Queensland Grants Commission to reduce our grants amount impacts on our TIDS grant, which comes through to our council, and it's taken over our whole road network, despite the fact that TIDS grants only fund local roads of regional significance, and we've actually got increased lengths of those. So I find it very difficult to understand how it can stand up to scrutiny when that has happened, and that will be another $1 million to us over 3 years. Decrease, that is. So, I mean, they're taking it from the total road network, and as it applies, it only applies to the local roads of regional significance. So they're two different things, and I maintain that if they only fund local roads of regional significance, then that's what it should be taken on. And I actually protest about that. I think it's really wrong, because we have a community, we've had a lot of rain and weather events, and our road network is seriously in need of being upgraded in many areas. And to have the government not recognise that through the Grants Commission, I think is, I can only say that it's probably, they perhaps need to have another look and educate themselves. Thank you.
I think you and I have had some conversations about the respect that there is for local government, and we can talk about both other levels of government here, and what's happened to us in respect to this is the absolute opposite to a reward for having a strong financial base and the work that our people are putting in. Councillor Bill.
Thanks, Chair. Back on page 15 of 37, Anne-Marie, just a comment, I guess. I note with interest our asset sustainability ratio out to 2030-31 in a steady decline. Nonetheless, the comments are relevant, but we live in an evolving financial climate, and therefore I think not just this council, in fact, way beyond this council, it will be a case of evolving organisation, our approach to the way we do things, our structure, our prioritisation, generally how we do business. Because if we don't, if we do the same things, we're going to get the same results. We won't necessarily get the same outcomes. Or we will, but to our detriment. So, yeah, I just note with interest, it's a changing climate for everyone. So it's something not just for this boardroom, but a succession of boardrooms to keep their eye on the wheel and look for those ways in which we can innovate and evolve as we move through the challenges ahead of us.
Thanks, Councillor Bill. Any other questions and comments? Councillor Von Hoff, then Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Just on that same page that Councillor Carl was referring to, 15, and those key sustainability metrics, the operating surplus ratio, that is a change, is it not, from what we were seeing in the annual financials, annual report. Yeah, thank you. And I understood it was within the QTC's 10% buffer of acceptability, but these numbers have revised down quite significantly. Would you be able to comment a little bit more on that, please?
So the downward trend we're looking at here is a direct result of that $8 million reduction. So the actual, if you look at the target is there on the left-hand side, that's 0 to 10%. So we are required to review this, the long-term financial sustainability plan, which these ratios are derived from every time the budget's reviewed. So we did that when we adopted the budget in June. The annual report then is our actuals for the previous financial year. When we looked at Budget Review 1, so the September Budget Review, there was a full review, and we've reviewed them again. We're looking at an increase in inflation at this point in time. I think it's over 4% at the December quarter. We've done this review over the last couple of days, this review of the 10-year plan. Obviously, there's a need for a much more extensive review. We'll be factoring in the EB increase that we're hoping to sign off shortly. Inflation, fuel costs, materials. We know from the information session last year that we have outsourced a degree of plant hire that previously was internal. That impacts on the bottom line. Additional capital will, especially in upgrade and new capital, will increase our depreciation and also impact on this ratio.
It's interesting because it's actually more stable now. Previously, we had a pretty significant jump around the 28-29 financial year up to around the 8%, still within the parameters,
But that's right.
but it went from about 2% right up to 8%, and now it's revising
Smooth
down
it
and
out.
smoothing out.
Councillor McDonald?
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to move it, but I'll make a comment, if I could, beforehand. And I guess just picking up on a couple of comments in regard to the key sustainability metrics. It's interesting because it's a sign of the times for local government, and I couldn't agree more wholeheartedly with comments from Councillor Carroll and subsequently yourself, Mayor, in regard to the financial assistance grants. And I think if there was a message that could go back to the federal government and subsequently to state government, it's about making the pie bigger, not keeping the pie the same and dicing it up differently, because we have added pressures on us because we are sustainable, because we are a place where people want to live, learn, work and play and invest. So we have that, and that will not go away. Sure, our revenue base may increase, but our growth is such that we need to get to those parts, and we're going through a new planning scheme. This afternoon we've got sessions. All of those things lead to financial pressures on an organisation of growth, and we've seen that. So I think the question really should be around the recognition, as you say, and you've often said, around local government and the fact that, you know, what do we have, over 3/4 of the assets that we maintain. So I think there needs to be that recognition. So that's a comment, it's a challenge for us. Thankfully, the heavens have opened up and our dams are full, because it would look a lot different in those subsequent years Councillor Von Hoff raised in regard to the operating surplus. It would look substantially different if we didn't have to, or if we still had to pump water and electricity usage from Wivenhoe. So they've been modelled in there, which helps smooth that out a bit. But I think given where we are and the fact that last year's surplus ratio was 4.2%, it probably showcases for us as a council that the volatility of being able to deliver our service has never been greater. And trying to forecast that with whether it's infrastructure or water, wherever it might be, trying to forecast that is not an exact science at its best. And it has extra pressures now with regard to staffing, supply of services, contractors, and we're at the brunt of that at the moment. So I give credit to not just the financial services to get it to this point, but to the whole organisation, because recognition that you can't deliver something that you've promised at the start of a financial period is tough to do. It's tough to do because we've had a commitment to the community that we'll deliver X amount of projects. The community are smart. They understand that there's challenges. They see it. When they go to the shopping centre, when they go elsewhere and they see the price of fuel, they understand that. But it is tough as an organisation to come to a budget review or even end of year, and you've got to face the community and say, look, we can't deliver it this financial year, knowing full well that it will go to next year, and that puts pressures on our sustainability next year to fit to the 165 plus the quarantine. So we are at a challenging time. Councillor Carl raised some really good points about local government, how we may need to adapt and change, and I would say that we're continually doing that, having invested quite significantly on behalf of this community to look at that and look at our services, what we provide. So I do think that this budget review is a responsible approach to volatile times, is where I'd put it. And I think if we can maintain this by the end of year, we will have done very, very well. And if we deliver the capital works that we've put in there, we will have done very, very well, because it is a challenge. So, Mayor, just with those comments, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Councillor McDonald has moved the recommendation, which is that we adopt the amended 2021-22 annual budget, attachments 1 to 6, and the reasons for that recommendation to enable the adoption of the February 2022 budget review. Is there a second to Councillor Carol Taylor? Anyone wishing to speak against? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried without dissent. Can I just thank our staff for the work that they do? This is a big organisation, and the work that's done behind the scenes in a very complex organisation, but a big organisation. Please understand that our gratitude goes to each and every one of you who do that work. Very much indeed. So with that, I will close the meeting.